Today, we are diving deep into a case that is an absolute cornerstone for anyone studying Indian family law, Anuradha versus Santoshnath. And get this, it's not just one case, but actually two landmark judgments that came out of a single, really complex matrimonial dispute. It's a case that literally shaped legal principles that are still in play today.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the human story. What was actually going on between the couple. Then, we'll explore this really interesting procedural fight over maintenance that led to its own separate ruling. After that, we hit the main event, how the court completely redefined the concept of impotency in law. We'll look at the final verdict, and then we'll wrap it all up by talking about why this case from the 70s is still so incredibly important.
So at the very heart of all this legal drama is a marriage that, believe it or not, only lasted about 4 months. But that short union kicked off a legal fight that dragged on for years and, in the process, created some major legal precedent. Now, this timeline, it's pretty telling. They get married in late 1968. By the end of March 1969, that's only about 4 months later, they've already separated. And just a couple of months after that, the wife, Anuradha, files her petition in court. I mean, that kind of rapid breakdown just tells you that this was going to be a very, very contentious legal battle from the get-go. So the wife's petition was built on two main pillars under the Hindu Marriage Act. First, and this is the big one, she claimed the marriage should be annulled because of her husband's impotency, which she said prevented consummation. Second, she alleged cruelty. Now, while both are serious claims, it was really the impotency allegation that became the focus of the legal battle and set all these important precedents. And the husband's response? A simple, complete denial of everything. Okay, this is where things get really fascinating because we have a sort of story within a story. Before the court even got to the final decision about the marriage itself, this whole other legal fight erupted over interim maintenance payments, and it led to its own major ruling in 1975. To really get this, we have to understand a key legal term, maintenance pendente light. Basically, under Section 24 of the Hindu Marriage Act, it's temporary financial support. A court can order one spouse to pay the other while a case is still going on. The whole idea is to make sure that person can support themselves and actually afford the legal fees. In this case, the court ordered the husband to pay the wife 125 rupees a month. So the trouble started when the trial judge began to feel like the wife was dragging her feet, maybe even deliberately delaying the case. So he did something pretty unusual. He ordered that her maintenance payments would be put in abeyance, basically put on hold, for as long as she failed to produce her evidence. And that move, well, it sparked a huge legal question. See, if you look at Section 24 of the Act, it doesn't explicitly say a judge can just change or suspend one of these interim orders. So the question was, did the trial court even have the power to put her payments in abeyance? This specific issue went all the way up to the Delhi High Court. And the High Court's answer was definitive. Justice B.C. Misra, in that 1975 ruling, made it clear. He said that courts have what are called inherent powers under Section 151 of the Code of Civil Procedure. This is a big deal. It means they can make orders they deem necessary to stop people from abusing the court process. And yes, that includes modifying interim orders like maintenance. But here's the crucial twist. Even though the court could suspend the payments, Justice Misra said the word abeyance just means a temporary hold, not a permanent cancellation. This was huge. It meant that once the wife produced her evidence, she was still entitled to get all that back pay. So on this specific procedural point, it was a major victory for her. All right, with that procedural battle out of the way, let's get to the main show. We're now turning to the final appeal judgment from 1977. This is the one that tackled the main issue head-on, the husband's alleged impotency as a reason to annul the entire marriage. So everything really boiled down to this one question for the court. Did the situation meet the requirements of Section 12(1)(a) of the Hindu Marriage Act? That section says a marriage can be declared voidable if it wasn't consummated because the other person was impotent. The burden was on the wife to prove that this was exactly what happened. And this is where the case truly becomes a landmark. The court introduced a legal doctrine that was, frankly, revolutionary for Indian law at the time, Impotentia Quoad Hunc vel Hunc. This changed everything. It shifted the whole legal idea of impotency away from being just some general biological problem. It recognized that incapacity could be psychological or even relational. A person could be considered impotent with one specific partner, even if they were perfectly capable with other people. This thinking led Justice Misra to create the legal test that has become the gold standard in Indian law ever since. The key is that the focus isn't just on some abstract medical diagnosis. The real legal test is whether, within the context of this specific marriage, consummation was a practical impossibility because of one person's mental or physical state. Okay, so the court has this brilliant, nuanced new legal test. The big question now is, how did they actually use it with the facts of Anuradha's case? Let's break down the court's reasoning for its final decision. The court's approach was super methodical, really clear. First up, they reinforced that the burden of proof was entirely on the wife. It was her job to prove her claim. Second, they took a hard look at all the evidence she brought forward, her own testimony, her family's testimony, and frankly, they just didn't find it credible. And finally, they looked at the medical experts, and that evidence also failed to back up her claims against her husband. So, in the end, what happened? Well, even after the court created this very sophisticated legal test for impotency, it found that the wife just hadn't brought enough credible evidence to meet that standard. Her appeal was dismissed, and the original trial court's decision to keep the marriage intact was confirmed. So you might be thinking, okay, she lost the case, so what's the big deal? Well, that's where this story gets so interesting. Even though Anuradha didn't get the outcome she wanted, her case created an incredible, lasting legal legacy. Let's wrap up by looking at why these old judgments are still required reading for any law student in India today. This case's legacy is just massive, and it hits on two fronts. The 1975 judgment settled that courts have inherent power to control their own process. And then the 1977 judgment gave us the entire modern framework for handling impotency cases, from that nuanced Quoad hanc idea to the practical impossibility test, all while making it crystal clear that you need a high standard of proof to win such a claim. And all of this leaves us with a really big question to chew on. This test of practical impossibility was created almost 50 years ago. Today, our understanding of relationships, of psychology, of sexuality is constantly evolving. So how should modern courts take this principle and apply it to the complex realities of marriage today? That's the question this case leaves us with.